Chapter 101, Interrogation. Compared with borrowing the power of card monsters, chess usually preferred to summon them directly to fight. To put it simply, he knew a little of the Black Magician's magic, but his skill wasn't on the same level. He would have to spend time and energy to learn and master it. Having many skills was good, but spreading himself too thin was like biting off more than he could chew. It felt like taking the long way around. In high-intensity battles against similarly powerful opponents, it would also push chess's mental limits, preventing him from chaining card attacks as quickly and calmly as when the card monsters themselves were doing the fighting. After all, his magic duelist soul didn't consist only of monster cards. It included various magic and trap cards too. And there was a more crucial point. If a card monster was destroyed in battle, it returned to the deck to rest. If he died, it was over. So normally, chess only used some of those abilities when his magic power was overwhelming, or when he truly lacked the power to summon card monsters, like the lightning roar he'd used to finish Jose. Things were different with the Sky Dragon. Its strict magic power requirement meant it could only be a final trump in life or death situations, but the God-Slayer magic derived from it could radically improve his fighting style. This was genuine God-slaying power. With the boost in magic power, chess's close combat ability, already solid and honed through his daily life in the guild, was far from weak. Add the God-Slayer magic buff and the Sealed One's right arm, which grew stronger the more he fought, and he could reach S-class solo without relying on cards. Imagine an evenly matched enemy who bypassed every card to directly take chess down, only to be met with the Sky Dragon's iron fist. What a scene. After the council's interrogation is over, I'll have to study the Sky Dragon's power properly, he thought, pushing aside the daydreams. He declined Black Magician Girl's invitation to warm the bed and let his consciousness slip back to the real world. It was late, the campsite quiet except for insects chirping and the occasional sleep-talking coming from Natsu on the next bed. Things like, Mistogen, let's have a match, Urza, I'll beat you today, and where did Dad go? Chess chuckled at the odd comfort those mutterings might give a hidden father. He pulled the blanket up and slept. The next day, after a simple breakfast the council had bought from Magnolia, the tedious interrogation began. Both Fairy Tail and Phantom Lord were being questioned at the same time, each in separate rooms. Lahar, captain of the mandatory supervision unit, handled Fairy Tail's side, while the council's frog-faced envoy took Phantom Lord's. The arrangement was simple. The frogman didn't want to be alone with chess. The method ensured the council could control facts tightly and weed out deliberate distortions. The downside was obvious. It was painfully slow. By the time Chess's small group was called for their first round of questioning, it was nearly noon. "Who's going first?" the escort asked. Me! Natsu shot his hand up and dashed forward. He, who always hated and distrusted the council, was oddly enthusiastic this time. He wanted to beat Chess and Mistogen to the punch. Useless as it might be, he wanted to get ahead. Macau and Wakaba, swept up in the energy, followed closely. When it came to showing off and outdoing each other, the Fairy Tail lot were inexplicably driven. Soon only Chess and Mistogen remained in the tent, with Happy curled at their feet. "Chess, you go first," Mistogen said calmly, getting to his feet. Normally Chess would have made a show of asserting himself, but his thoughts were still on God-Slayer magic. He couldn't be bothered. He lined up behind Wakaba and the small procession. Natsu, Macau, Wakaba, Mistogen, Chess walked toward the interrogation room. The three at the front held their heads high, wearing proud smiles that seemed to be for anyone watching, constantly showing off to comrades in other tents, smug in a way that made Lucy mutter from another tent, "Are those three idiots or what?" Mira smiled and glanced at Chess. That doesn't look like his style. Urza's eyes, however, were fixed on Mistogen at the back of the group. They reached the interrogation room in order. After Natsu, Macau, and Wakaba had been questioned, it was Chess's turn. He pushed aside the tent flap and stepped in. A square wooden table sat in the middle, and Lahar, in his council uniform, was poised opposite him. "Well, I didn't expect you fellows to be so considerate. Tea and everything. Thank you for the trouble." Chess sat, reached across the table, and took a couple of sips from the red tea. Lahar, watching his familiar mannerisms, felt a headache coming on, picked up the file beside him, and got straight to the point. Chess, male, 23, S-class mage of fairy tale. He flicked his eyes to the file, then back to Chess. According to Phantom Lord, it was you who hung their guild member Gajeel from Oak City's clock tower to provoke them. Do you have anything to explain? As expected, Chess said. He attacked people from our guild first. I was counterattacking to protect my comrades. He set the teacup down. You can verify it by checking West Street in Magnolia. Someone should have seen it. Even though it had been the middle of the night, a commotion like that would have woken anyone nearby. Lahar raised a hand, trying to keep the formality of the interrogation. A reminder, he said dryly. Natsu Dragneel already bragged, admitted to it. Chess inwardly cursed Natsu for jumping the gun, then admitted it himself. Putting aside that Gajeel had started it, Phantom Lord had been causing trouble everywhere and had damaged Fairy Tail long before this incident. Many of their provocations were more serious. Even if some on the council wanted to press the matter, at most he'd be charged with causing a disturbance, which wouldn't change the fact that Phantom Lord and Sabretooth had actively instigated the guild war. Lahar knew that too. The questioning was mostly procedural. The council had essentially reached its conclusion and was just gathering details to file its report. Chapter 102, Fairy Queen, Dancing Queen. The interrogation was predictably dry and tedious. It had boiled down to a list of facts: previous clashes with Phantom Lord, how Phantom Lord had appeared, and the circumstances in which the magic-guided cluster cannon Jupiter and Inferno Shatter had been used. Because Chess had been the one to confront Jose and dismantle Phantom Lord's headquarters, he had to provide far more detailed testimony than the others. By the time Lahar's questioning wrapped up, after Chess had refilled his tea 3 times and nearly polished off all the snacks and desserts on the table, both men were ready to leave. Chess stood to stretch, preparing to go, when Lahar suddenly called, "Wait a moment, Mr. Chess." "I've already said everything I need to," Chess replied, turning back with a little impatience. Sitting for so long had worn his patience thin. He didn't feel like being polite to the council any longer than necessary. Lahar, picking up on his mood, scratched his head awkwardly. "What I'm about to say isn't as captain of the council's mandatory inspection unit," he began, "but from a personal standpoint." He cleared his throat, his expression taking on unusual gravity, and then he bowed deeply to Chess. "I never had the chance to thank you properly. Thank you for protecting my sister and her family during the Irmo Relic Island incident." "Oh, small world," Chess smiled faintly. "Isn't great power supposed to protect the weak? It was nothing. Buy me a couple of drinks sometime." No wonder this rigid, by-the-book man had given Natsu that special reminder during questioning. Lahar's gratitude explained it. Unfortunately for the young fire user, Lahar himself wasn't particularly powerful. Any real fight wouldn't have yielded many cards anyway. "Definitely," Lahar said solemnly. Chess waved dismissively, stepped out of the room, and was followed by Mistogan. Because Mistogan had taken on the likeness of council member Chikalayan to avoid creating more trouble, he had planned for the worst and used transformation magic beforehand. Even after the questioning began, Lahar had not asked him to remove the black veil. Fairy Tail, having come out victorious, held the upper hand in both public opinion and in the regulations. With the verdict essentially decided, the interrogation was mostly a formality, collecting testimony to convict Phantom Lord and to warn other guilds not to cross the line. Still, the tedious process dragged on for 2 full days. It wasn't until the afternoon of the 3rd day that the council's amphibian envoy announced that members of the 3 guilds were free to move about the camp and no longer confined to their tents. That evening, Fairy Tail took all their tents down, not in a wrecking frenzy, but carefully and respectfully under Makarov and Urza's supervision. After all, the tents were the council's property. The real reason was practical. They needed an open space for a proper feast. After the long battle with Phantom Lord and the confinement of the past few days, everyone was ready to cut loose. Even Lucy felt stiff from inactivity. When an eager Natsu breathed fire to light the bonfire, the feast officially began. At first it seemed to go smoothly. The guild sat on the ground, drinking, eating meat, and bragging loudly. Laughter filled the air. To Lahar and the council envoy, it looked like the well-behaved, reconciled scene Makarov had promised. But only until the wine hit a certain point. Predictably, Natsu and Gray started fighting. The two couldn't stand each other, and immediately turned a convivial feast into a brawl that dragged in everyone nearby. Elfman, shouting about manhood, Kana downing barrel after barrel, Macau and Wakaba arguing fiercely over human origins, Loki slumped in the arms of some pretty woman and looking exhausted, and more. Plates, condiments, and drinking vessels flew everywhere. The peaceful tableau dissolved into chaos in seconds. In a corner, Lahar wiped a stray leek leaf off his glasses and watched the mayhem with a twitching mouth. He regretted his earlier leniency. He really shouldn't have been swayed by gratitude for his sister's rescue. "This is simply outrageous," the council envoy barked, indignation sharpening his tone. "If this is the sort of behavior you call a feast, Mr. Makarov, you must put a stop to it." Makarov scratched the back of his head, looking embarrassed. "Don't worry, someone will keep order." And with those words, the commotion mysteriously subsided. Fairy Tale's self-appointed disciplinary committee had moved in. "I've told you before, this is one thing to do in the guild, but look around you. The council's mandatory inspection unit is watching," Urza said, her face taut and an intimidating aura crackling off her. "Yes, Urza, we'll behave," Natsu and Gray squeaked, clinging to each other in abject terror and suddenly filling the well-behaved children image Makarov had described. "Happy no, 2 is back for a limited time," Levy muttered to Lucy, pleased by the rare sight. The rest of the guild quickly covered up any roughness and rearranged themselves into awkward smiles and arm-in-arm poses. Urza lowered her fierce presence and pointed toward a secluded corner. There, Bijita, dressed in a black leotard, was twisting and turning in bizarre, entrancing dance moves under the moonlight, entirely engrossed in his own world. It was equal parts unsettling and hypnotic. "Luchan, I don't think Bijita is releasing stress," Levy whispered. Lucy glanced over and shrugged. "Nope, he just likes it." Urza's eyes lit up. "As someone known as the Dance Queen, I haven't danced with you all in a while." Her voice was suddenly bright and excited. "This is a rare chance. Let's make the feast entertaining." Chapter 103, Thanks, Chess. "The Dance Queen, Urza actually has a title like that?" Lucy stared, unbelieving at Urza's confident expression. "Yes, anyone who dances with Urza will feel completely relaxed, body and mind." Mirajane, dressed casually, drifted over with a smile as she looked at Urza, who had changed into a pale blue dress. She teased, "Lucy, want to give it a try?" I'll just watch for now," Lucy said, noticing the odd looks on her friends' faces. Levy's forced smile said the same thing. Before they could say more, Urza reached out and gracefully invited Natsu. "Come, Natsu." "Huh? Me? What about Gray? He's better at this." Natsu reflexively tried to shove his friend forward, but Gray was already 10 meters away, sitting shirtless on the sand with Marcus, chatting. Natsu blinked. "When did he?" "Come on, Natsu, don't stall. Dancing needs momentum," Urza said. Before Natsu could protest, Urza grabbed him. In her skilled hands, he became a human top, spinning at high speed. So gross. "Ugh, I'm getting dizzy. Urza, I'm getting dizzy. Ah!" Even Natsu's eyes went into spirals. After a few moves, he staggered and collapsed to the ground. Lucy, who had watched it all, was stunned. So that's what Mirajane meant by feeling relaxed in body and mind. Ara, isn't Natsu looking awfully relaxed right now?" Mirajane purred. Lucy snapped back to herself and instinctively hugged her chest. Inching closer to Levy, staying near Mirajane felt strangely risky. "You're too weak, Natsu. As a man, is this all the spirit you have?" Elfman strode over, scowling in contempt, not yet realizing the gravity of the situation. "Well said, Elfman," Urza agreed, then reached out, seized him by the shoulder, and announced, "Your turn." Wait, Elfman began, but the world lurched and the scenery spun. Faces flashed by, then a wave of vertigo hit. Man. He, the most manly of men in Fairy Tale, lasted only a few seconds longer than Natsu before wobbling and collapsing. "Even you, this is all the spirit you have? I'm disappointed." Urza sighed, scanning for the next dance partner. Seeing Natsu and Elfman in such a state made the remaining men reluctant to stand alone. Quickly, everyone paired off. Those with girlfriends found them, the single ones grabbed nearby drunks, and some men teamed up with each other. A few used painting magic to conjure female partners out of thin air. The formerly rowdy scene took on a peculiar air of elegance. On a large branch away from the center of the banquet, Chess held a big beer mug and watched. A dance party? Ha ha! Looks fun. He glanced at Mistogan beside him. Aren't you going to join? No interest. That atmosphere doesn't suit me. Mistogan's calm eyes reflected the glow of the feast. Ches just laughed and shook his head. Trying to get the aloof Mistogan into a wild dance was probably harder than fighting Acnologia. Suit yourself, Ches said. After they clinked mugs and drained them, Ches leaped down from the tree and threw himself into the crowd. You guys are too timid. What's there to be scared of with Urza? If you apply the same spin in the opposite direction, you'll break her rhythm. Oh, it's Ches! He's challenging Urza. This is going to be something. Want to bet? Go Ches. Bring honor back to the men. He keeps grabbing my waist. Urza already has an opponent. Lucy, who are you betting on? Chess's arrival turned the awkward atmosphere electric. Mistogan slowly set his wooden cup down and lifted the black veil that hid his face. Being able to stand here like this is enough, he said quietly. Watching Chess whirl and holler in Urza's arms, a rare smile curved Mistogan's mouth. He murmured softly, Thanks, Chess. Elsewhere, Phantom Lord's side of the field was dead silent by comparison. The victor was king, the loser was a bandit. Jose had already seen his fate and shut himself away in a dark tent. The battle with Fairy Tail had shattered his pride and made him realize the gulf between the guilds. The memory of Chess having rallied the entire guild with a single card haunted him. Magic comes from the heart and the will, and a broken, isolated Jose would accomplish little. He was destined for prison. The other Phantom Lord members leaned against the isolation wall, watching Fairy Tail's jubilant domain with looks of envy, sorrow, and bitter regret. Gajeel and the Four Elements were among them. I've never seen anything like this, one murmured. So there really is a guild that feels like a home. Arya's eyes filled with tears. His usual catchphrase had been replaced by a choked, No, this is so unfair. We should be the ones dancing. Saul ground his teeth, twisting as if in agony. Is this why we lost? Because of this? Totemaru sighed and seemed to make a decision about his future. A man with such power ends up looking so pathetic in front of such people. Gajeel stared at Chess, defeated by Urza earlier, his expression wavering. What kind of guild is Fairy Tail? And Juvia, her eyes had become pink hearts, all her attention fixed on one shirtless figure. Juvia wants to take off her clothes and dance with Grey Sama too. Chapter 104. Guild Arts. After the chaotic dance party, everyone stayed at the base for another 2 days to add to their earlier testimonies, which made it easier for the council to organize the records. Since the cause and course of the incident were clear, there was little need for debate. The containment was lifted 2 days earlier than in the original timeline. By the afternoon of the 5th day, the Fairy Tail members were free to move about, though they still had to be on call for any further summons from the council. Led by Master Makarov, the guild returned to Magnolia in a grand procession. Hey, Guildmaster Makarov, you all came through okay this time, right? When Phantom Lord's giant showed up on the lake, I was so scared. Thank goodness the town wasn't badly damaged. That was awesome, Chess, tearing a giant apart like that. Awesome, sure, but please don't go wandering down our street when you've got nothing to do. Mira and Urza, you both look beautiful today. Residents lined the route, cheering and greeting them. Even though Fairy Tail had been at the center of the conflict, the early evacuations and the blocking of the magical giant's attacks had left the townspeople grateful and trusting. Chess is really popular in Magnolia, Lucy said softly, watching the crowd call out the name most often. Even toddlers know to stay away from Chess when he's bored. Happy raised a paw with a grin. That means even if he's a handful, he's still our Chess. Lucy covered her forehead and sighed. No matter what, Chess is one of only 2 mages in our guild who gets special treatment in Magnolia. Mira smiled faintly as she glanced at Chess, whose rough expression had frightened a child into tears. Special treatment? Lucy blinked, puzzled. She had never heard of such a thing. What's that? Urza stepped forward to explain. It's called the Chess Code. Every Magnolia resident knows it and follows it to the letter. Lucy thought it over for a moment and then grinned. Really, truly worthy of being Ches. Now that's special. You're still too far away from that kind of special treatment. You need to earn it, Urza said seriously. Pfft. Do I look like someone who wants that? Lucy protested, pointing at herself. Besides, it doesn't sound glorious. Wait, Urza, did you say one of only two? Natsu and Gray haven't heard of it. Mira is obviously one of the popular ones, so who's the other? Mistogen? No, that can't be. From Chess's point of view, could it be Laxus? Lucy, more focused now, analyzed properly. No, it's Gildarts. He's the only one stronger than everyone else in the guild. Magnolia even has a Gildarts mode. Mira tapped a finger against her lip and smiled. His strength is so far above everyone else's that people hardly include him in the usual talk about fairy tale's strongest mages. Leagues apart? You mean he's even stronger than Chess and Urza? Lucy's eyes went wide. At her current level, she couldn't imagine what kind of monster that would be. Compared to him, I'm just a child, Urza admitted, shaking her head. Gildarts, huh? If I ever get the chance, I want to fight him, Chess said, striding up with battle light in his eyes. Even with his current strength, he probably couldn't match Gildarts, but as one of Fairy Tale's cards, he hoped to get something valuable from the fight. Getting beaten up was a small price to pay. Chess, you'd be crushed if you challenged Gildarts recklessly, Urza warned solemnly. Damn it, I'll beat that old monster next time I see him. Natsu clenched his fists, scowling. Natsu, have you forgotten that Gildarts knocked you out for 3 days with one punch last time? Happy piped in mercilessly. So annoying, I'm way stronger now than 3 years ago, Natsu shot back. Heh, even if you had 30 years, you idiot Fireball, you wouldn't catch up to Gildarts, Gray said dryly. Hey, hearing you lot makes that old man sound even scarier, Lucy complained. Gray, your clothes. Huh? When? Amid the usual bickering between Natsu and Gray, the group reached the guild's location. 5 days of weather and warfare had taken their toll. The building that had once been the Fairy Tale Guild Hall was now a ruin, the familiar sign broken in two. The remains of Phantom Lord's magical giant were gone from the lake. Whether they had sunk or been cleared by the council, no one could say. The sight of the rubble tightened chests. For members like Kana, Mira, and Natsu who'd grown up here, it was painful. Even Makarov's aged eyes held a shadow of sorrow as memories flooded him. At 88 years old, he had been thinking about retiring for some time, but he had never found a suitable successor. His son Ivan might have had the right age and experience, but Ivan had fallen into darkness and become a master of a dark guild. Gildarts was too fond of freedom and spent most of the year away, and his grandson Laxus, well, there was no point in even discussing him. He was arrogant and constantly called his guildmates trash. Considering everything, strength, experience, and loyalty, Chess seemed the best candidate for the fourth-generation master. But the thought of that brat potentially tearing the council apart gave Makarov a headache. Difficult. Choosing a successor was an impossible problem. Maybe he'd just keep going as long as he could. You brats, what are you standing around for? We're going to rebuild the guild. If you don't clean up this mess today, none of you are going back. Makarov barked, shaking off his worries and taking charge. Chapter 105, Having an Affair. The guildmaster's sudden strictness startled Lucy and the others into action. Nobody dared to slack off. Everyone began casting spells and working frantically to clean up the site. What kind of guild is the guildmaster planning to build? Is it going to be the same as before? Macau muttered as he used magic to heave a heavy stone slab and toss it into the lake. No, came the reply. The new guild will be much larger. While the council was in control, the guildmaster already had some preliminary ideas. Mira smiled and produced a rough draft, holding it up for everyone to see. Macau leaned over and froze at the sight of the abstract sketch that looked like a child's random scribbles. Oh, you already have a design drawing? Gray, walking by with a wooden board, peered at it and sneered. Huh? What kind of drawing is this? Which idiot drew this? Mira's smile vanished in an instant. She covered her face and began to cry. It's you, Mira. Gray panicked. Hey, that's really mean. You made her cry. She's crying. No gentlemanly behavior at all, the others chimed in, pointing. Gray flustered and fumbled awkwardly to comfort her. Just then, Chess came over and took the sketch from Mira's arms. He studied it for a moment, then remarked, this shows a grand, castle-like building, a spacious bar, a food street running around it, and an outdoor pool. That looks like a pretty good concept for the new guild. Are you an idiot, Gray? It's drawn in detail. How could you not see it? Mira's eyes, rimmed with tears, lit up. Chess understood. She had stayed up all night carefully drawing this according to the guildmaster's description. Chess, are you serious? Gray, Macau, and the others were surprised. Nearby, Lucy, Natsu, and Happy huddled together with guilty looks. Wait, Ches actually understands it? Normally, he'd be the first to laugh, Natsu said. If Lucy had drawn it, she'd definitely cry, Natsu added, then immediately backtracked. What do you mean if I were the girl? I'm fragile too, okay? The three of them looked at each other, stuck out their tongues in unison, and sang in mock conspiracy. Having an affair. The little interlude ended. By the time the site was fully cleared, it was already evening, and the sun was sinking west. Everyone had gone back to the girls' dormitory or their own homes, leaving only Makarov, Mira, and a handful of others to continue discussing construction plans and the order of material deliveries for the official start tomorrow. Lucy trudged toward her rental house, exhausted. The road was the same rickety riverbank as before. The boatman who'd warned her was still there, and Plu, the little Canis Minor, trembled at her heels. People were chatting about the council's verdict, how Phantom Lord would probably be disbanded, and how great that outcome was. Chess really is strong. He stood up to Phantom Lord's guildmaster from the Saint Ten. Urza and Mira handled their opponent's elements like it was nothing, someone said. And Mistogen wiped out all Phantom Lord's branches by himself and vanished the moment he left the station, another added. Lucy listened as if answering Plu and also herself. Her expression hardened. If something like this is never going to happen again, I have to cut ties with that man, she said quietly. She had already decided, from the moment she chose to respond to everyone's feelings and stay with Fairy Tale, she would go back to that cold house and tell her father, Jude Hartfilia, how determined she was. But first, a hot bath. She hadn't relaxed at all these past few days at the station. When she pushed open her rental house door, the lights were on, just as she expected. Yo, Lucy, you're back, Natsu shouted from the pink bed, grinning. We've already taken a bath, Happy added, turning to sharpen his claws on a pillar. Lucy froze for 2.5 seconds, then her gentle expression snapped. She hurled her suitcase with deadly accuracy. This is my house. The suitcase flew and slammed into Natsu and Happy, sending them tumbling into the cracked wall. They lay there groaning and spitting out exaggerated amounts of blood, comic casualties of Lucy's temper. Lucy stomped over and thrust 2 cups of tea at them. Drink this and then go home, now. You're so heartless, Natsu complained. We helped clear the guild ruins, and you kick us out this late? Yeah, and you say we're teammates, Happy whined, refusing the tea. Lucy softened at their injured looks and tried to be reasonable. Fine, go to Chez's place. His house is big enough. No thanks, Natsu pouted. Chez's place is inconvenient. You could get beaten at any minute for breaking something, and you have to pay for damages. Plus, I can't sharpen my claws on their walls. Happy went over to the nearest wall and demonstrated his claw marks. See? No fees here. Let go of your stinky claws, dead cat. Lucy rolled her eyes so hard it was visible. Before she could scold them further, a familiar voice interrupted. Sounds like you two have a lot to say about me, huh? Chess called. Natsu and Happy clamped hands over their mouths. Chess and Black Magician Girl had dropped in through the open window, already standing on the desk in the living room. Could you not come in like normal people? Lucy complained, glaring at the footprints on the desk. My house has a door. Black Magician Girl hopped down, sheepish. Sorry, Lucy. We saw the window open and were too lazy to go around. Wait, didn't I lock the doors when I moved back from the council station? Lucy frowned. Then she realized someone else had to have used the window. Of course, the same route Natsu and Happy had taken to sneak in earlier. Chess strolled over casually and picked up one of the teacups. Before Lucy could protest, he had finished the tea and set the cup back down. Hey, that's my teacup. Lucy covered her face with one hand and sighed. Forget it. Chess, you didn't come just for tea, did you? Black Magician Girl grinned mysteriously and answered for him. Of course not, Lucy. Master brought you something nice. Chapter 106. Fusion. Natsu plus Happy equals U? Good stuff? Lucy blinked, a little pleased and a little surprised. If those words hadn't come from the mouth of the Black Magician girl and had instead come from Chess, she might have been suspicious. It wasn't that she didn't trust Chess, she did, but the pink dumbbell he'd tricked her with last time was still in Natsu's hands. Besides, ever since the Karuna Island incident and Phantom Lord, she hadn't had a chance to train properly. While Lucy mulled it over, Chess had already pulled a blank card from the void. Inside is a training program organized by the Black Magician, plus a few summoning magic books. You can extract them by injecting magic power into the card. Judging from how things played out later in the original story, Lucy, who inherited all of Layla's keys, really did have huge potential with celestial spirit magic. She had the celestial spirit coat that let her harness spirit power, and abilities like opening multiple spirits at once, mastering the super magic celestial map history, and even summoning the celestial spirit king put her far ahead of most other spirit mages. The reason she often got overshadowed wasn't lack of potential, so much as being surrounded by powerhouses like Natsu and Gray. Based on what Chess had said, the Black Magician's training plan aimed to awaken that potential. Oh, I almost forgot. Lucy brightened and took the card from Chess carefully. Chess, please tell Mr. Black Magician I said thank you. Between siblings, formalities weren't necessary. She accepted the favor gratefully. The Phantom Lord incident had strengthened the bonds between her and the guild. It had only made her more determined to grow stronger to protect everyone. Even if she felt weak now, she wanted to change that. Training plan? Let me see it. Natsu's eyes lit up immediately. He lunged for the card. No, it's personalized. Only for me. Lucy clutched it to her chest. It was okay for them to look, but she didn't want Natsu accidentally ruining the precious notes the Black Magician had organized. If it was ruined, well, she'd have to atone in a suitably dramatic fashion. Don't rush, Natsu. I actually have something for you and Happy, too. Chess raised a finger and grinned mysteriously. He'd planned to tell them tomorrow, but since he ran into Natsu and Happy here, why not show them now? We get something, too. Happy's mouth watered at the thought. If it's a card that summons endless fish, I promise I'll never sharpen my claws on your house's pillars again. Only at Lucy's. Lucy wondered how she kept getting dragged into these conversations. It is related to cards, she said, but it's not that kind of thing. Chess pinched the air and revealed a new card. This is a magic card I obtained recently. It can fuse two independent individuals together. Want to try it? He asked. Chess explained by analogy. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, fused monsters usually become stronger than the originals or gain powerful effects. Either way, fusion meant getting stronger. How that translated to mages was unknown. Would fused magicians gain extra heads like an ultimate dragon, or become a new persona like Dark Paladin? Would the outcome be determined by the attributes of the materials, or random? The card's description gave no details. They'd have to test it. Fusion magic? Sounds awesome. Natsu, always eager for anything new, pumped his fists. If I fuse with Happy, maybe, no, definitely, we'll be the strongest in Fairy Tale. Happy cheered too. Neither of them thought much about possible risks. If it sounded fun, they were in. Lucy rolled her eyes. Fusion magic should mean synchronizing your spells, right? And the word fuse just sounds kind of ambiguous. Embarrassed by her own thought, she covered her mouth and glared at Natsu and Happy. If you're both okay with it, I'll start, Chess said. He injected magic into the card. A dazzling magic circle bloomed beneath Natsu and Happy's feet. The circle became a vortex that pulled them in, drawing the two excited fusion participants together in a brilliant burst of light. A strange and powerful aura filled the cramped rental room. Lucy had to raise her arm to shield her face from the glare. When the light dimmed, Lucy opened her eyes and almost choked on her tea. Standing in front of her was someone neither wholly Natsu nor Happy. He was a man with dark blue skin. His face still bore Natsu's features, but the heavy, drooping eyelids Gray always joked about were gone, replaced by round, alert pupils that looked wise. On his head sat an enormous Happy Cat face hat. Cherry-colored short hair stuck out beneath it, with a distinctive blue fringe at the front. A long, slender blue cat tail swayed behind him. It was a bizarre, eye-catching combination, like Natsu wearing a Happy costume, at first glance. Everything looks so much wider. I even have a tail. The voice was a strange mix of the two, Natsu's brashness with Happy's lilting cadence. Lucy practically sprayed her tea. After she calmed down, curiosity won out. She leaned forward and asked as plainly as she could, "Hey, are you Natsu or happy?" The fused figure tilted his head, propped his chin on a hand, and thought for a beat. Then he clenched his fists, struck an exaggeratedly proud pose, and announced, "I'm neither Natsu nor happy." He puffed out his chest. "I am the Fire Dragon Cat Lord, the one who wields the power of a fire dragon and the charm of a cat." Chapter 107, Chess vs. Natsu Happy. Lucy blinked, a little dumbfounded by the bizarre introduction. This book was being published across the whole network. "Hey, Fire Dragon Cat, over here, over here." Black Magician Girl smiled and tossed a grilled fish toward the fused Natsu Happy. "You should call me Fire Dragon Cat Lord." At the scent of fish, Natsu Happy snapped to attention. He took a step, leapt, and perfectly caught the grilled fish on its parabolic arc. He shoved it into his mouth and chewed happily. Black Magician Girl beamed and turned to Chess. "Master, he really does have Happy's habits." Lucy could only stare. "Somehow it feels like you trained a dog." "Ha-ha," Chess said. "Let's try something else." He clapped his hands, walked to the corner where Lucy kept her refrigerator, and without hesitation pulled out the only fish head left inside. "Hey, why are you rifling through my fridge and that was for fish head soup?" Lucy's silent protest was loud, but it didn't change anything. Chess casually swung his arm, and in front of Natsu Happy's greedy face, threw the fish head out the window. Whoosh! A magic circle flared behind Natsu Happy, and two small white exceed wings sprouted from his back. The wings thudded. Natsu Happy streaked into the night, intercepted the fish head above the street, and clamped it in his paw. Then he breathed flames over the frozen head until it was roasted, and began to gnaw on it with relish. Not just the mannerisms and looks, can they use their original magic freely too? Chess murmured. Judging by the magic consumption, it's probably the total of Natsu's and Happy's magic combined, he added, narrowing his eyes as he analyzed. That means activation of the fusion depends on the amount of my magic and the fusion material's magic. By that logic, Igneel, hidden somewhere inside Natsu, should still be isolated and unaffected by the fusion. Even Acnologia couldn't detect him. It seemed like some kind of advanced spatial magic. I feel power surging after I eat it." While Chess thought, a newly emboldened Natsu Happy finished the fish head and suddenly grew confident. Battle intent lit his dead cat eyes. Flames crackled over his body. "There are so many things to complain about," Lucy muttered, unsure where to begin. "Anyway, let's have a match, Chess. Right now, I'm invincible." As Natsu Happy erupted with magic, the flames pulled toward the red and white wings on his back. The wings slowly unfurled amid the heat, producing a startling sight. There was even a whiff of dragonized Natsu about him, if you could ignore the comically happy-colored skin. "Good courage. All right, I accept your challenge, Dragon Cat." Chess moved fluidly, flipped out the window, and landed on the empty street below. Wait. Battle? Here," Lucy cried. "Don't worry, Lucy, it should be quick," Black Magician Girl said with a smile. "And you should call me the Invincible Dragon Cat King Lord." Natsu Happy hovered, emphasizing his new title, then shifted into a battle stance. "Try this one, Chess. Fish Destruction Secret Art, Happy Fire Style, Crimson Flying Fish Sword." Flames howled. The street lit up under the dark sky. The river glowed crimson. Bathed in fire, Natsu Happy took the shape of a burning flying fish and dove toward Chess with terrifying force. Chess inhaled, gathered magic in his right arm, and a pattern bloomed on his sealed right wrist. He threw a single decisive punch and shattered the crimson flying fish, landing squarely on Natsu Happy's abdomen. Thud. The flames collapsed. Natsu Happy dropped to the ground. "So weak. This is ridiculous," Lucy fumed, stunned. From her perspective, it had played out like, the Invincible Dragon Cat King Lord flew up. Chess threw a punch. The Invincible Dragon Cat King Lord fell. Honestly, I was braced for the whole house to be in danger. No matter how scary the aura looked, Natsu and Happy together are just that, Black Magician Girl said. "True," Lucy conceded. "After all, the opponent is Chess. Not even two more Natsus would beat him." On the street, the fused form lay unconscious. A little white spirit holding a triumphant white flag floated briefly from his mouth. Chess frowned. "It seems Natsu and Happy together still don't give a measurable increase in battle power," he muttered. The root cause was, of course, Happy. and the fact that Natsu was internally conflicted. To see meaningful changes, Chess thought, he'd need to fuse someone more comparable to Natsu. He wasn't in a hurry. The test had yielded useful information. With a gesture, Chess undid the fusion magic affecting them. Cards activated by the user's magic had that advantage. There was no need to find and play a separate fusion release card. The magic circle flared and bright light split the fallen form into two. Damn it, it's your fault, Natsu. You're too weak. I could have beat Chess otherwise. You were holding me back, Happy. If two of me fused, I'd be invincible. It's your fault. It's your fault. Idiot! Isn't it obvious? Natsu and Happy blinked awake and immediately began blaming each other in earnest. Lucy, at the window, twitched a smile. You two's relationship is way more fragile than I expected, she said. Ara, they're like cute kids, Black Magician Girl purred, enjoying the show. Hey, Chess, I don't want to fuse with Natsu. Let me fuse with Lucy. Happy, done with arguing, hopped toward Chess. A pink slipper sailed from the windowsill, thwacking Chess square on the deep blue forehead. Dead cat! I told you not to say such things, Lucy cried, clenching her fist. Happy's right, Ches. Let me fuse with Lucy and then fight you. Natsu popped his head up and hurried in too. Another pink slipper smacked him. Lucy ground her teeth. Hey, you two, can you at least ask me before doing this? Natsu and Happy covered their heads and bowed shamefacedly toward the windowsill. Sumimasen, honto ni sumimasen, they mumbled. It's obvious Lucy doesn't want to fuse with you, Chess said with an amused shrug. He glanced up at the stars. Let's call it a night, he said. I'm a bit tired. Black Magician Girl, let's go. We're heading back. Okay. After a quick farewell, Black Magician Girl streaked away in a ribbon of pink light, following Chess. Lucy watched their figures fade, then turned back to the two idiots still bickering. Right. Chess, take these two idiots back. Chapter 108. New Guild Starts. In the end, Lucy reluctantly let Natsu and Happy stay. The reason wasn't complicated. She was kind-hearted. Normally, she would have chased the two of them out, but watching them bicker so fiercely about fusion made her unable to turn them away. Of course, her mercy turned out to be unnecessary. The moment they heard they could sleep at her place, Natsu and Happy lit up and sprinted back to the rental house, laughing and joking. They were soon fast asleep on the floor, sprawled out like two careless idiots. Watching them, Lucy suddenly realized and felt a sting of regret. She had been tricked. Meanwhile, after returning home, Chess didn't rest. He withdrew into card space and began to work with the Sky Dragon's Godslayer magic. Calling it cultivation was generous. The process was mostly getting used to the new power. Because this magic was granted through a direct connection with the Sky Dragon, the basics of releasing and using it required little formal training. What Chess needed was time and repetition to raise his proficiency. He also had to study how best to combine that power with his card battling style to maximize its effect. After a round of practice with all the card monsters present, Chess ran further tests on magical card fusion. The conclusion was clear. Card monsters, unlike living magicians such as Natsu and Happy, couldn't be fused at will. Fusion monster cards were required to perform those fusions. It was a little disappointing, but not unexpected. The deck's internal rules treated fusion monsters as a special type of summon. Without the corresponding cards, there was no way to create them. Just like the Chaos Black Magic ritual, without the card Chaos Black Magician, the ritual did nothing. Given this mechanism, Chess figured fusion monster cards would be released over time. Setting aside those like the Super Magic Swordsman and Super Magic Dragon Knight, which still lacked identifiable fusion materials, the current deck's three knights, King, Queen, and Jack, and the Heavenly Knight they could form were promising. The Heavenly Knight was a high-attack effect monster with 9 stars, almost like an advanced version of the Duelist Soul Cheat. By the time Chess left card space and returned to the real world, it was late. He stripped off his sweaty clothes, took a long bath, and came back to the living room to boil water for tea. Black Magician Girl wanted to come out and keep him company, but her master, Black Magician, had already dragged her away by the ear to study and train. The only sound in the quiet, spacious living room was the kettle's rhythmic gurgle. From the busy council headquarters back to normal life, and without that Black Magician Girl chattering beside me, Chess muttered as he put the tea leaves into the pot. The house smelled faintly of fresh tea. He was in simple leggings. The day's work had left his muscles defined and tired. Knowing Lucy, she'll head back to the Heartfilia residence as soon as tomorrow. It's time to deal with Jude, he added, watching the tea steam. A hard, serious light flickered in his eyes. The situation between Lucy and her father, Jude, was a heavy one. Back when the family was prosperous, Jude focused on expanding his business and neglected his relationship with his daughter. When the company later collapsed and Jude finally woke to his errors, Lucy had vanished for 7 years after the Tenru Island incident. Jude was left to die, consumed by regret and unanswered longing. Father and daughter never had a proper reconciliation. Chess had made a decision as soon as Lucy had called him brother. What kind of brother wouldn't try to fix that? Beyond personal reasons, it was also strategically important for the guild to establish ties with the Heartfilia family, one of Fiora's leading consortia. Even Phantom Lord, a far larger organization than Fairy Tail, had tried to win Heartfilia's favor. The Heartfilias eventually fell into bankruptcy, and though the original tales didn't elaborate fully, in a country built on magic, the loss of a prominent magical figure could break a family's influence. After Layla's death, the Heartfilias lacked a magician with both reputation and strength. Jude had adopted his wife's surname to keep that legacy, and he had worked hard to rebuild the family's power. Without a strong magical backer, rivals could easily exploit you. Jude wanted Lucy to marry into a powerful family to secure everything and to keep her out of harm's way. But he underestimated how formidable Fairy Tail really was. For both public and private reasons, Chess knew he had to reach the Heartfilia residence before Lucy did. The next morning, the construction site swarmed with activity. Under Guildmaster Makarov's direction, construction crews and suppliers streamed in, and guild members threw themselves into rebuilding. The open area, fenced and stamped with the Fairy Tail emblem, quickly began to take shape as the new guild hall. Piles of lumber, bricks, steel pipes, and iron frames stacked high. Walls had already started to rise, sketching out the building's basic frame. Though the lot sat by a lake on soft ground, foundation issues were a low priority. Magnolia's Guild Arts mode could rearrange layouts anyway, so such concerns were almost moot. In a world of magic, construction moved fast. Nah, none of you can beat me, even rebuilding the guild, Natsu shouted, hoisting a dozen boards and scanning the site with a cocky grin. His voice carried across the work area. Gray's competitive streak flared. He walked over, inhaled sharply, and hoisted twice as much lumber in a single strained lift. The heavy load looked like a moving mountain on his shoulders. After taking 2 uncertain steps, he staggered, then collapsed in a thunderous heap, scattering boards everywhere. Ha! You call that strong? I'm dying laughing, Natsu taunted, pointing at Gray. He laughed so hard his own balance shifted, and the pile of lumber on his back tumbled down with him. Both boys landed in a mess of planks. You idiot! The one who should be taking them one by one is you, Gray snapped, seizing his opening to retaliate. What did you say, Droopy Eyes? Natsu shot back. You got your head smashed or something? Pathetic. Bastard, you want to fight? If you've got the guts, come and get me. Their tempers flared like clashing elements. Ice and fire mingled in the air as their faces hardened, and they pushed so close their foreheads nearly touched. The two of them stood like opposing poles, the challenge pure and immediate. Chapter 109, Chess and Lucy Disappear Thump. Just as Natsu and Gray were about to start fighting to teach each other a lesson, a wooden plank came down from the side and flattened them into the dirt, leaving only their heads sticking out. I'm telling you, too, we're rebuilding the guild right now. Can you be a little more serious? Urza said, her face hard as she slowly pulled the plank away. She was wearing a yellow safety helmet and work clothes meant for hauling bricks. Yes! Natsu and Gray snapped to attention at once. I always feel like whack-a-mole with you guys, Happy grumbled, seizing the opportunity to complain. Urza glanced over at Makarov, who was using giant magic to lift a beam nearby. Foreman, where should this plank go? Team leader Urza, just pile it with the other materials, the giant Makarov called with a smile. Their construction site outfits and the sudden bustle had the rest of the guild murmuring. Fairy Tail had turned into a building crew overnight. Behind a stack of supplies, though, a pair of lecherous eyes were fixed on Gray's forehead. Juvia wants to be buried in the dirt with Master Gray. That way, Juvia can have Master Gray's children. Juvia squealed, twisting in excitement. No need for too many. 30 should be enough. Her imagination ran wild, and a glorified, fan-filtered gray filled her head, along with scenes far from child-friendly. The Phantom Lord mages had been released last night after paying fines. Only Guildmaster Jose, who had provoked the conflict, was taken back into council custody. In truth, a guild's purpose is practical, where mages take and accept jobs, and the guildmaster is held responsible when his people cause trouble. From that viewpoint, the council's treatment of ordinary mages was fairly lenient. Makarov, of course, still ended up cleaning up after Chess and Natsu. Gray, who had just dug himself out of the dirt, felt a strange prickle and looked toward Juvia's hiding spot, but he saw no one. Weird. Why do I feel like I'm being watched? He murmured, frowning, though with so many workers around, he didn't dwell on it. Under Urza's supervision, he got back to work, well, as much as Gray could be said to be working when Natsu was around. Time passed quickly. By noon, Natsu and Happy had discovered a heart-shaped bento box of unknown origin. After tasting it with Urza, they praised it highly. Gray, on the other hand, scowled and refused to eat. Someone had shaped the rice balls into his face, and he wasn't in the mood for prank food. Have you seen Chess? Mira asked, gliding over in a wine-red dress and holding colorful blueprints. She wanted him to be the first to evaluate the set of designs she'd rushed to finish, and her eyes sparkled with anticipation. Gray eyed the doodle-heavy plans warily and kept his mouth shut. I don't know. Haven't seen him all day, Natsu said without thinking. He should be the first to show up for this kind of thing. That does seem off, Happy agreed, puzzled. Urza stabbed the rice ball eyeball with her fork and popped it into her mouth, then glanced around. Come to think of it, I haven't seen Lucy either. Gray suddenly felt an ache behind his eyes. Lucy must still be at home. Happy raised his hand. She kicked us out first thing this morning. She's probably sleeping it off. Natsu remembered the early morning scene where Lucy had kicked them out and grumbled. If that's the case, we should go check her place. Gray agreed. He suggested going to her rental house, even though the construction site still felt off to him. Urza, more worried than anything, especially after the Phantom Lord incident, nodded. Ches didn't seem to concern her. If he were missing, it was probably the unlucky outsiders and the guildmaster who would be most anxious. After a quick word with Makarov, the group left the construction site under Juvia's reluctant gaze and made their way to Lucy's rental. Natsu and Happy dropped in through the window, Gray climbed down the chimney, and Urza appeared out of thin air. None of them used the front door. The place was unusually quiet. Lucy's usual slow-to-start complaints were absent, and the silence felt wrong. They searched everywhere but found no trace of Lucy. Happy rifled through the mailbox and found a stack of unsent letters to Lucy's mother. Urza discovered a note on the desk, weighed down by an ink bottle. Home? She read aloud. Natsu, Gray, and Happy went white at once. With the guild only just beginning its reconstruction, the home Lucy had gone back to could only mean one place. The note says she went back to the Heartfilia residence, Urza said gravely. That can't be. Lucy hates that place. Natsu shouted, panic evident in his voice. She probably didn't want the Heartfilia consortium to come after the guild again, Happy speculated. What are you saying? Let's go get her back quickly. Lucy is our friend. Urza snapped. There was no hesitation. When it came to a guildmate, they moved fast. They rushed to Magnolia Station. Lucy, dressed casually, sat on the train home, staring out the window at the speeding landscape with a complicated expression. Chess, traveling by Citadel Winged Dragon, was even faster. He had already arrived at the Heartfilia residence. In the luxurious mahogany study, Jude Heartfilia glowered at an intelligence report about Phantom Lord's defeat. What a bunch of garbage, he muttered, slamming a fist down on the sturdy desk and scattering papers. They couldn't even take down Fairy Tale, yet they still call themselves Fiore's strongest guild. He clenched his teeth, considering hiring multiple guilds with money to bring Lucy back. The sudden quiet in the room put him on edge. Who's there? He demanded. From the shadows at the edge of his vision, a dark blue cloak stirred. Chess stepped from the dim corner, voice low and polite. Good afternoon, Mr. Jude Heartfilia. Chapter 110, To Hell with Your Luck. The moment Jude saw the stranger step into the room, his face hardened. There wasn't time to wonder how the intruder had gotten past the mansion's defenses. He reached instinctively for the hidden alarm button under his desk. As the home of one of Fiora's wealthiest men, the Hartfilia estate was bristling with security, guards, wards, and a small staff of magicians. When the red button depressed, a sharp alarm should have echoed through the halls. Instead, after a few seconds of silence, there was nothing. No footsteps thundered in, no shouts, not even a servant peeking through the door. "If you were planning on calling those useless magicians and servants, you can stop," the stranger said. "They're all sound asleep." Chess pulled a chair to the desk with casual ease, sat opposite Jude, crossed his legs, and smiled like a man who owned the room. "Right now, in this mansion, you're the only one awake." Jude's bodyguards were no pushovers, but compared to whatever Chess was, they would be useless. Jude tightened his grip on the desk and asked coldly, "What are you doing here?" "Chess of Fairy Tale," Jude said when it clicked. He'd seen the name in the papers after the Irmo Relic Island affair. That explained the arrogance-tailored suit and the calm authority Chess carried. "You're the man who's been making trouble for us. You came here about Phantom Lord, didn't you?" "You didn't forget so quickly, Mr. Jude," Chess replied, meeting Jude's eyes. "You hired Phantom Lord to bring back your runaway daughter." "I commissioned Phantom Lord to retrieve my rebellious daughter," Jude said, forcing himself to remain seated, trying to keep his voice level. "If you think that makes me guilty of anything else, explain yourself." "I have no love for those phantom men," Chess said, narrowing his eyes. "But you indirectly hurt Lucy and my friends. There's a price for that." "Name it," Jude sneered. He'd dealt with magicians before. When money was on the table, most grudges could be bought off. He could handle whatever Chess wanted, then deal with Fairy Tale in his own way later if Lucy didn't bend to his will. Chess smiled and extended a single finger. 1 billion. Jude's frown deepened, but he didn't hesitate. "Fine, I can write a check right now." "Take the money and leave," Chess said. "My time is worth more than this." No, you've got it wrong," Jude began. Chess lifted a hand to cut him off. 1 billion covers guild damages," he said, "and the cost of hurting my beloved companions." Then he shrugged, the smile going hard. "That said, 100 or 200 billion will do to make sure this never happens again." Jude's pen stopped mid-stroke. He looked at Chez in disbelief and fury. "You," he barked. "Money fixes everything, doesn't it, Mr. Jude? Now, you've always reduced human worth to a sum on a ledger." "You're only a child from a guild," Jude spat back. "Don't get above yourself. That arrogance will ruin your guild." "That's terrifying. The mighty Hartfilia Consortium," Chess said, mockingly steady. He stood, took 2 deliberate steps closer, and leaned forward across the desk until they were nearly nose to nose. "Don't forget," he said softly, "your daughter Lucy is in that so-called Mere Guild." Jude slammed his palm on the table and rose to his feet, the room bristling with his outrage. "Lucy's true home is the Hartfilia family. She's in Fairy Tale now." "That's a stupid, ridiculous whim. She's in Fairy Tale now. From the moment she was named Lucy Hartfilia, her life was meant to be different from the people who scrape for petty coin. She's in Fairy Tale now." The repeated phrase jabbed at him like a thorn. Jude's breaths came harsh and fast, his face flushed, his hands trembling. The man opposite him wasn't arguing with logic. He was baiting him. And yet Jude couldn't deny the simple fact. Lucy had chosen to be with them. "You're a kid trying to extort me," Jude roared, veins standing out in his neck. "You don't get to call her Lucy. As an outsider, you can't possibly understand the luck that's finally fallen on her." Jude shouted, the anger raw. "Do you know what Lucy looks like when she gets angry from being teased? Do you know what she looks like when she cries, when everyone protects her? Do you know how she laughs when she wants to, or complains when she wants?" "I do." Chess's voice rose with him, flame in his tone. "Everyone in Fairy Tale knows. Lucy calls me brother. But she calls you father with an icy distance. Who's the outsider then?" The questions and the accusation dismantled Jude's facade. His hands curled into fists. "If that's the case, you shouldn't stand in the way of Lucy's fortune. Her marrying the eldest son of the Jalal Nanu family, that is her greatest luck." The last words were a desperate, triumphant roar, echoing off the high ceilings. Chez laughed, loud and abrupt. Jude froze. The laugh was irreverent, vulgar in its simplicity. For a man used to polite facades, it was a slap. When Chess's laughter died, he sat back with his arms on the chair's rests, legs crossed, smiling coolly. "To hell with your luck," he said. Jude stared, speechless. "Fine," Chess went on, voice suddenly clinical. "If Mr. Jude insists on forcing Lucy into a marriage, I won't stop you. That's a heartphilia family matter." Before Jude could gather himself, Chess tilted his head. "But the man she marries might not necessarily be the eldest son of the Jelal Nanu family, is he?" Jude's laugh was sharp and incredulous. "You attack the Jelal Nanu family? Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" Chapter 111, Resurrection. "Sorry, I actually do." Chess said it as if it were nothing. Jude's pupils narrowed. He stared at the young man calmly, then a single important memory snapped into place. At a cross-continental banquet, he'd overheard talk of a mage from Fiore who had made waves on the Kiltina continent. That mage had been named Chess of Fairy Tale. If this was the same man, Jude realized, Chess might do the unthinkable. He could strike the Jelal Nanu family or level the Heartfilia estate in minutes. The confident veneer Jude had worn all evening cracked into something like panic. A man of influence feared only the unpredictable. A madman like Chess who answered to no one. "It seems you still haven't grasped the point," Chess sighed softly. Threats and intimidation might make Jude wary enough to abandon any plan to pressure Fairy Tale or force Lucy into a political marriage, but that wasn't why he was here. He'd already learned that reasoned argument, his so-called talk no jutsu, couldn't change Jude's mind, so he would have to use other means. "Mr. Jude, because you are Lucy's father, I didn't want to do this," Chess said. What are you going to do?" Jude demanded. A card appeared between Chess's fingers, as if by thought alone. Jude stepped back, alarmed. Chess's voice was calm as he spoke the command. "Magic card, brainwashing. Activate." A magic circle bloomed under the card, and from it slid a pair of grotesque, spectral hands. Jude flinched and raised a hand to block, but the phantom hands passed through his arm and lunged straight for his mind. Darkness snuffed out his vision. When Jude opened his eyes again, the study was empty. Chess's chair was vacant. From the corridor outside came the low shuffle of servants with luggage and sullen faces, and a hollow sense of abandonment filled the room. "Stet! Baylor! What are you doing?" Jude barked. Forcing himself upright, the head-maid Stet stopped and bowed deeply, tears in her voice. "Thank you for your care over the years, sir. Even if the consortium goes under, please take care of your health." "Consortium bankrupt?" Jude stared at them, disbelieving. Before he could process, a sharp pain burst behind his eyes, and he doubled over, clutching his head. Images crowded him, betrayals by partners, competitors encroaching, supposed allies watching impassively. Memories that weren't his suddenly felt as real as his own life. He saw himself destitute, penniless, setting out alone to carve a path north to rebuild Heartfilia from the ground up. He pictured walking for years through the underside of the kingdom, scraping by, only to learn of Fairy Tale's mysterious disappearance and spend his remaining years lamenting his daughter in letters on her birthdays. In that vision, he finally wasted away, alone and ill, dying in a cold, empty room. He was still in his study. Sunlight filtered through the window, bringing the faintest warmth. Jude startled awake in his leather chair, chest heaving. Across from him, Chess sat with his legs crossed, leisurely sipping tea. "Mr. Jude, how does it feel to be reborn?" Chess asked with a smile. Chess hadn't rewritten Jude's will. He'd used the brainwashing card to simulate a future, to let Jude live through what could be. He had deliberately kept the details sparse to avoid finer complications, but the emotional weight had been real. For Chess, it had taken the time to finish a cup of tea. For Jude, it had been years. Jude's hands trembled. After a long moment, he whispered, "What just happened?" "Don't worry, I gave you a dream," Chess replied, setting his teacup down and standing. He brushed dust from his trousers. Jude stared at him, unsteady. "If you get a chance, listen to Lucy's own thoughts and wishes. The tea here is terrible. I'm leaving." Wait, Jude called, scrambling after him. There were so many questions about that vivid experience. Was it really only a dream? Chess paused and glanced back. Jude found that he couldn't form the right question. His mind was still reeling. Finally, halting, he asked, "Who are you, really?" "Didn't I say so at the start?" Chess smiled, bright in the sunlight. I'm Lucy's older brother, that's all. Jude stared, shock and confusion mixing on his face. Then, as if letting go of something heavy, he laughed, an incredulous, slightly bitter sound. You fairy tale mages are insufferably calculating, he said, and then his expression changed entirely. He straightened, stepped forward, and bowed deeply, earnestness replacing arrogance. Thank you. You made me understand what I truly must cherish as a father. When he looked up again, Chess was already gone. Everything in the study was as it had been before the dream. The servants blinked awake at their posts. The house settled back into its accustomed quiet. But that quiet didn't last long. A small, sudden figure burst into the front yard. Lucy had returned. Chapter 112. Please allow me to apologize to you, to Fairy Tale. The housekeepers were gossiping about the strange fainting fit in the front yard when someone suddenly cried out, Miss Lucy! Miss Lucy is back! In an instant, everyone's attention snapped to the gate. Realizing the young lady had truly returned, they swarmed around her with cheers. Miss Lucy, thank goodness, you're really okay. At Miss Lucy's age, running off now and then is only natural. A shipment of Eastern spellbooks just came in. Want to take a look? Ah, oh my, to see Miss Lucy again in my lifetime. I can't. Sob, sob. Old Stella was so overcome she burst into tears, clinging to Lucy's legs and sobbing loudly. You really haven't changed at all, Lucy smiled, feeling her heavy mood lift as she took in those familiar faces. Miss, the master wants you to go to the study, one maid said, hurrying over. Lucy blinked. After a daughter who ran away for more than a year comes back, he just says, go to the study. The maid interjected, a little flustered. No, it's not like that. He said he wanted to see how you look now, and he specifically told me not to let you change into formal dress. I saw him earlier. He was boiling water, like he was making tea. The maid's tone was oddly uncertain. I can't explain it. The master seems different. I don't know how to say it, but he feels changed. Lucy's eyes widened. Jude making tea? The very idea was absurd. Lisa, are you sure you didn't imagine it? Another servant asked. Even those who had served Jude for years shook their heads in disbelief. They were more prone to think the maid had misread the scene than that their master had altered. Pressed by uncertainty, Lucy walked through the quiet corridor she'd known since childhood and stopped at the study door. She raised her hand and knocked. Father, it's Lucy. A calm voice called from inside, but there was an odd undercurrent of something like excitement. Come in. She pushed the door open. A gentle breeze lifted her shoulder-length blonde hair. Sunlight streamed through the open window, and it fell across the tall man in a suit seated at the tea table. The study's furnishings were the same, but somehow the room felt less oppressive, warmer than in her memory. At Jude's small gesture, Lucy took the chair opposite him and sat down. She noticed the cushion felt a little warm beneath her. From where she sat, the sunlight didn't reach it, but she kept that thought to herself. You must have been on the train a long time coming from Magnolia, Jude said as he pushed a cup of brewed black tea toward her, trying to keep his expression level. Have a taste. Yes, father. Despite her confusion, she sat up straight, brought the cup to her lips with the practiced grace of someone raised into etiquette, and took a careful sip. If Natsu and Happy were there, they'd hardly recognize the ladylike Lucy who'd drink tea like this instead of flying into a fight at the slightest provocation. How is it? Jude asked, anxious for praise like a child. Lucy blinked, taken aback by his tone, but nodded. It's very good. I knew it. Tea that costs 100,000 per caddy can't taste bad. Jude's normally precise face softened into a faint smile. That little chess was talking nonsense, as usual. 100,000 per caddy. Lucy's mouth twitched, and she nearly toppled off the chair. She'd never paid attention to prices when she lived here, but after being chased out by a landlady charging 70,000 for rent, she'd become painfully sensitive to anything involving money. How many months' rent did that one sip equal? Jude looked at her carefully. If this had been the Jude before his change, the sight of Lucy in this simple dress might have displeased him. But something in his attitude had shifted. He breathed out quietly. You seem taller, Lucy. His sudden concern startled her. Lucy, who'd come back prepared to cut ties with the Heartphilius forever, froze, staring into her teacup. She never expected it would go like this. An uncomfortable silence settled over the study. After a few seconds, Jude spoke again, his voice measured. About the guild you belong to, Fairy Tale. Lucy's heart clenched. Of course he'd bring up the guild. She straightened, her resolve hardening, and said the words she'd prepared, firm and resolute. If you use money or power to do anything that harms the guild, I will stand by my comrades without hesitation. I will become your enemy. At almost the exact same time, Jude bowed his head slightly toward her and said, For whatever I did regarding Phantom Lord, and for any harm I caused, please allow me to solemnly apologize to you and to Fairy Tale. I'm sorry. They stared at each other, shock reflected in both their faces. Lucy, braced to fight, blinked dumbly at her father's apology. Jude, surprised by his own words, let out a soft sigh. As he looked back on the Phantom Lord incident, he recognized how far he had gone, how much he had let his pride and power carry him away from what mattered. You think an apology is too late? Lucy murmured, a pout forming as caution crept into her eyes. The fierce stance she had intended to hold softened. It was strange and unsettling to see the cold, implacable man she remembered taking responsibility first. Lucy, although I'm not in a position to ask, may I request something of you? Jude asked carefully. Is it about marrying into some family? Lucy cut in, snorting. That was the only reason she could imagine he'd involve Phantom Lord in bringing her back. Even if your tone sounds better than I expected, I can't agree to something as boring as that. Chapter 113. Lucy, you are very lucky to have a good older brother. Jude stared for a moment, taken aback that Lucy had guessed so quickly. He lowered his head in shame, hesitated, then finally forced himself to meet her eyes. If it's not too much, could you call me Dad, just like you call Layla Mom? Hearing that soft, unfamiliar tone from her usually stern father, Lucy froze. Her eyes brimmed with tears before she could stop them. Jude, unused to showing emotion, flushed and waved his hands in panic. No, don't misunderstand. It's not. Do whatever you want to do, Lucy, he said quietly. Do it because you want to, not because you're the eldest daughter of the Hartfilia family. I always thought if Layla were still here, she would have said something like that, he added, and instead of comfort, the words opened the floodgates. Tears streamed down Lucy's face and fell onto her clenched hands. The feeling was unreal. This scene of her father understanding and supporting her had played in her dreams countless times. She was afraid it was only another dream that would vanish when she opened her eyes. Don't cry, Lucy. It's all Dad's fault before. I'm sorry. Hearing Jude's desperate apologies, Lucy felt the moment solidify into reality. She opened her eyes and seeing Jude standing before her through the blur, everything she had held back collapsed. Dad? She sobbed, throwing herself into his arms and crying like a child. I'm sorry, Lucy. I'm sorry. This won't happen again. Even if I don't want the consortium, I'll support you. After a long, trembling moment, Jude held her. Tears blurred his vision too. A gentle breeze moved the curtains. Sunlight spilled into the room and painted long shadows over the father and daughter clinging to each other. All the things Jude couldn't atone for after his bankruptcy, all the regrets Lucy had carried since her return, seemed to vanish in that embrace. Outside the study door, the servants, Stellar, Reborn, Lisa, and even hidden staff were quietly weeping. When Lucy's sobs had settled into hiccups, she wiped her eyes and asked, voice still shaking, Dad, why did you suddenly change your mind? Jude clasped his hands behind his back and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing out at the wide lands and sky that surrounded the estate. Lucy, you're very lucky to have such a good older brother, he said, then added more softly, and that's my good fortune as well. Older brother? Chess? The first image in Lucy's mind was chess, and Jude's expression only confirmed it. But how could chess? He gave me a severe talking to, Jude said with a wry smile, shaking his head. Suddenly his face lit up. Oh, and he said the tea at home is delicious. Lucy bowed her head and let out an awkward laugh. The thought of Chess's recklessness and her father's stubbornness told her that the real story was more complicated than a simple tea compliment. But Jude didn't want to say more, and there was nothing she could do but wait until she could see Chess herself and thank him properly. A thunderous explosion in the front yard cut off her thoughts. The guard captain burst into the study, out of breath. Mr. Jude, Miss Lucy, a few magicians claiming to be from Fairy Tale have broken in. Magicians from fairy tale? Jude asked. Lucy glanced toward the commotion, flames and bursts of ice flaring in the yard, and rattled off the obvious. Is it a hot-headed flame guy, a perverted naked guy, a super-strong woman, and a cat? Yes, miss. How did you know? The guard stammered. It really is Natsu and the others. A rush of relief and affection warmed Lucy at the confirmation. She started to rise to stop them, but Jude stepped forward first. They are guests of the Heartfilia family. Do not stop them. Escort them to the reception hall and be polite. The captain hesitated. Hadn't Jude earlier instructed Phantom Lord to deal with Fairy Tale? After the strange mass sleep that had fallen over the mansion not long ago, caution was understandable. But he obeyed Jude's order without question. Yes, sir. Soon, Natsu and his group were led into the Heartfilia reception hall. Even Urza and the others from the countryside, who had steeled themselves for danger, were stunned into silence by the hall's grandeur. Once Lucy and Jude appeared and exchanged a few words, the tension eased. It became clear to everyone that Jude was not some monstrous father. Natsu and Gray currently in his usual state of partial undress, began to wander, looking around freely. Happy rubbed his paws along a marble pillar and chirped about how rich everything was. Urza, who prided herself on composure, stood slack-jawed when Jude mentioned that several kilometers of land and even mountains were part of Lucy's backyard, murmuring, "The sky is so blue." The scene quickly descended into uproar. Lucy buried her face in her hand, embarrassed to watch. Jude, however, smiled and sighed with fondness. "They're adorable," he said. "I'm truly glad Lucy has friends like these." Chapter 14. Quick look! Chess made Mira cry. Finally. After whispering secrets at her mother Layla's grave, Lucy still chose to return to Magnolia with Natsu and the others. Even though the cold Heartfilia residence had warmed a little, Fairy Tale was where she truly belonged. Jude Heartfilia stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching Lucy wave goodbye to the tearful Stellar and the rest. Go, Lucy. Walk whatever path you want. No matter what happens, Heartfilia will always be your strongest support. Lucy, standing among her friends, suddenly looked up at him. When their eyes met, her face broke into a brilliant smile, and she raised her index finger high toward him. It was the fairy tale gesture Natsu had quietly taught her a short while before. "I'll always watch over you." Natsu, Gray, Urza, and Happy mirrored it in unison. Jude, though he didn't know the exact meaning, felt the emotion pouring out of his daughter. The old man, who'd felt like he'd been reborn, trembled, hid behind the curtain like a coward, and wiped his eyes. Only after Lucy's figure disappeared from view did he pull himself together, walk to his desk, and make a call. "It's me. Contact the finance department and transfer $1 billion to Fairy Tale." Just like the chairman of a huge consortium, Jude recovered his authority within seconds. "As expected of you, boss. Turning to acquisition when a frontal assault fails. Brilliant move. Not an acquisition, a donation. And make it anonymous," Jude said firmly. "Anonymous? Really? Any objections?" Jude's tone brooked no debate. A father's small compensation to his daughter wasn't going to be tied up with business politics. No? Then transfer it now. By the time Natsu and the others returned to Magnolia, it was late afternoon, nearly sunset. The temporary work counter at the guild construction site was in full swing. Chess, who'd come back earlier, had a serious look as he inspected the colorful blueprints in his hands. Mira sat beside him, hands clasped, her big eyes shining with excitement. Nearby, the black magician girl, suited in work clothes, wearing a safety helmet and holding a tape measure, was happily directing card monsters to haul bricks. A massive stone giant soldier had taken over Makarov's heavy lifting, carrying planks and bricks like a dozen cranes. A summoned demon acted like a welder, completing difficult steel welds with casual flicks. Curse Dragon and Citadel Wing Dragon ferried Macau, Wakaba, and others for airborne tasks. Elf Swordsman and Giant Shield Guardian handled the side jobs, moving bricks and planks without breaking a sweat. Chess's card magic was proving incredibly practical, earning non-stop praise from his comrades. Kana, another card mage, however, was less fortunate, caught in the crossfire and earning the kind of parental comment that meant, "They're not my kid." "Chess, how are the revisions?" Mira leaned toward him, impatient. Chess set the drawing board down and praised sincerely. "It's great. The layout's solid. An open-air bar and a gym," Chess finished, grinning. "Huh? But I didn't put a gym in. Mira stared blankly as if struck by lightning. Then realization hit. She covered her face and burst into tears. "Ha ha! Chess! You finally showed your colors." "Hey, quick, look!" Chess made Mira cry. Macau and Wakaba, who loved this kind of joke, rushed over and started razzing Chess mercilessly. Their laughter stopped abruptly. A purple storm flicked out of nowhere. The girl who'd received the Satan soul, Demon Mira, stomped the temporary bar counter to splinters. Her eyes were cold and full of pressure. "You two finished your work?" "No." Macau and Wakaba hugged each other, terrified. "Then get back to it," Demon Mira barked. "Yes, Foreman Mira." The two ran off so fast they vanished from sight. The others who'd come to watch likewise snapped to attention, returning to hauling bricks and avoiding further trouble. In some ways, Demon Mira was scarier than Urza. "So, Chess, shall we go back to that earlier idea?" Demon Mira clamped Chess under her arm like a prize and pointed at the discarded blueprints. "Oh, okay, but could you please let me breathe?" Chess, wedged under her armpit, could barely mutter and raised a trembling hand. Demon Mira's mouth curved into a beautiful and dangerous smile. "No." "Man, Chess, show us your manliness," Elfman called encouragingly from the side. "I'm gonna pass out," Chess thought, gasping for air. Black Magician Girl laughed. "Mira, teach that lazy master a lesson. He summons card monsters and then slacks off." "Really, whose side are you on?" Before Chess could black out, a loud bang came from the construction fence. "We brought Lucy back." Natsu barreled through, forehead bandaged from an earlier beating by Urza. Lucy, Gray, and the others followed. They all froze at the sight, especially at Chess's pitiful state and Mira's domineering pose. Except Natsu, of course. Oh, Mira with the Satan soul," he shouted, fists clenched. "Perfect. Let's fight." Thump. As expected, Demon Mira's punch flattened him. She'd knocked him out cold in an instant. Chess finally wriggled free and collapsed beside her, gulping fresh air. "Welcome back, Lucy." Mira dispelled her magic, smiled and waved. "Where did you go? I didn't see you all day." "Sorry, Mira, I worried you. I went home today." Lucy rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. "Home?" The group stiffened. "Lucy's home. Heartfilia Manor?" "You don't have to worry," Urza said calmly. "Lucy's father surprised us all. He's easy to get along with. Actually a very decent person. If I hadn't seen it myself, I'd never believe he was the kind of man who commissioned Phantom Lord," Gray added with a grimace. "Tell me about it. Lucy's house is huge and they're loaded. If anyone's short on money, just ask Lucy to lend you some." Happy raised his hand innocently. That single sentence sent a ripple through the crew. Greedy and lecherous looks popped up everywhere. Lucy squeezed her wallet tightly. That damned cat, always getting her in trouble. Chapter 115, Chance Encounter with Juvia. After some playful roughhousing, everyone noticed the sky growing darker and wrapped up their conversation about Lucy and the Heartfilia Consortium. One by one, they left the construction site and headed home. Since their houses were close, Lucy asked Chess if they could walk back together, an excuse more than anything. Night had fallen, and they strolled along the wide street beside the city canal. The blonde girl stretched her arms to keep her balance, walking unsteadily along the riverbank, followed by the small Canis Minor, Plu. "Hey, careful, pretty girl!" A local fisherman called from his boat as he drifted by, not forgetting to shout a warning. "Got it! Kind old uncle." Black Magician Girl flashed her trademark peace sign and waved back with a smile. In a careless moment, her foot slipped, and she lurched toward the river, but Flash transformed her into a pink streak of light, and she snapped back safely to the bank. The astonished fisherman muttered, "What an idiot!" Chess, walking behind, sighed in embarrassment, then glanced at the unusually quiet Lucy at his side. "Lucy, you didn't ask to walk with me just because it was on your way, did you?" Lucy seemed distracted. After a pause, she blinked and answered, "Huh? Oh, yes." All the way, she'd been wondering how Chess had managed to make her usually stubborn father, Jude, change so much. No matter how she thought about it, a plausible explanation didn't come to mind. Could Chess really have beaten him up that badly? "So, Chess," she asked cautiously, "did you go to the Heartfilia mansion today?" "That's right," Chess said. "Even if he's your father, you can't let him treat the guild like that. He had to be made to answer for it." Chess's jaw tightened. After hearing Natsu and Urza, I guess my words must have gotten through to him. Since Jude was bound to have told Lucy something, she pressed on. Your words? Chess, what did you tell father? Chess shrugged. I reasoned with him. He's the richest man in Fiora. We can't just solve things with fists, right? Lucy looked up, eyes wide with a look that clearly said she didn't believe him. The Jude she knew wouldn't have listened to his own daughter, let alone a stranger like Chess. Still, that wasn't the heart of what had been churning in her chest. She didn't want to press the details. There was a much easier way to handle it, Chess. Why go through all that? Lucy stopped walking and buried her face in her chest, staring at the neat paving stones beneath her feet. She'd come to understand Chess, the sort who'd choose a fight over words if he could. Even against the powerful Heartfilia Consortium, he'd probably prefer force. She had already guessed the truth, but having lost her mother young and grown up in a cold household, she didn't know how to handle the sudden rush of happiness welling up in her. In the quiet, she felt a warm hand settle on her head. Silly girl, Chess said, ruffling her hair. Because we're family. Beating Jude up would be the fastest fix, but then you'd make me choose between Fairy Tale and Heartfilia, he added, half smiling. That would hurt, right? Although she'd suspected it for a while, hearing Chess say it made Lucy's nose sting and her eyes water. Chess quickly withdrew his hand. Black Magician Girl, he called to the girl in front of them. On it, she answered. Black Magician Girl, who'd been watching silently, darted forward, bouncing. Before Lucy could react, the girl's pale, slender hands were already tickling under her arms. Wait, Black Magician Girl! Stop! Ah, it's so ticklish! Ha! Stop! Lucy twisted and laughed uncontrollably, tears spilling from the corners of her squinting eyes, tears born of both joy and embarrassment. Ha ha! That's better! You've got to laugh for a happy ending, Black Magician Girl crowed. Chess folded his arms and watched the two blonde girls play. Girls' tears were far harder to handle than any fearsome enemy. For Lucy, today would be unforgettable. The next day, reconstruction at Fairy Tale progressed at full steam. Magic-made construction moved fast. The first floor of the new guild was already taking shape within a few days. Core load-bearing walls and pillars rose from the ground, scaffolding neatly arranged around them, ready for the next phase. Chess got up early after a good sleep, practiced a bit of Godslayer magic in his spatial quarters, then headed to the site with a light step. He hadn't reached the fence before he could hear the familiar bickering of Natsu and Gray from inside. In a shadowed corner by the fence, something wriggled. Ah! Juvia wants to press foreheads with Gray-sama too, a voice squeaked. Juvia, dressed in blue, crouched there clutching a lunchbox. She peered through a narrow gap, eyes sparkling as she watched Gray, lost in a stolen fantasy. Oh, really? And then? Chess asked. Juvia blinked, cheeks flushing. Then, at such close range, our lips will meet, and Juvia can stick out her tongue. She had been indulging in an embarrassingly lewd daydream when she turned and saw Chess. She jumped back so fast she practically vanished a few steps away. You're Chess, the one who fought Guildmaster Jose? The hearts in her eyes were instantly replaced by alarm. She was no match for this powerful man. Don't get so nervous. We're not enemies now, Chess said casually, waving a hand and smiling. Since you're Gray's girlfriend, you can be considered Fairy Tale too. Girlfriend? Lover? Wife? Mother of 30 children? At the mention of girlfriend, Juvia froze, then went pink all over. A moment later, with a thump, she collapsed, swooning in a lovesick, blissful daze. Chess's mouth twitched. Her reaction was even more dramatic than he'd expected. Chapter 116, The Fusion of Ice and Fire. Chess! Over here! Over here! Mira, chatting with Lucy in front of the temporary bar, waved frantically when she spotted Chess walking into the construction site. Chess threaded his way around the chaotic pileup where Natsu and Gray were leading the day's customary fairy tale brawl and walked along the edge of the fence. Morning, Mira. Morning, Lucy, he called as he sat down casually beside Lucy. Morning, Chess, Lucy answered. Mira bent down, fished a hidden breakfast from the cabinet under the temporary bar, and pushed a pink plate across to him. It's a special time, so we'll make do with something simple. Chess looked down to find a carton of milk, a red bean bun, and 2 boiled eggs. Not exactly extravagant, but more than adequate for a quick meal. He didn't fuss. He picked up the bun, tore open the wrapper, and ate half of it in one bite. Lucy narrowed her eyes. The quality of the bread and the milk carton were far better than the usual work meal Mira handed out. You really bought that just by passing the bakery, she asked. Mira blinked and smiled at Lucy. I stopped by the best bakery in town. How is it? Ches glanced at the warm bun in his hand. You bought these. How are they still warm? I kept them against my chest to keep them warm for you, Mira said, grinning. Huh? Ches felt a faint milky scent. Mira laughed. I'm kidding. I kept them in a special magic power insulation box. She reached under the counter and produced a pink metal container that looked vaguely like a microwave. There were no batteries or power cords, just a crystal orb on top where you could inject magic power to operate it. Ches relaxed. I see. That makes me feel better, he said, finishing his food. Mira's smile instantly froze. She wasn't sure whether to be offended by his choice of words. Lucy, sensing the tension, slid her chair a bit farther away, maintaining a safe distance from Ches. Mira was about to activate Satan's soul to get to the bottom of it when a construction safety helmet sailed across the site. Ches, who was peeling a boiled egg, reacted without looking and snatched it out of the air as if it had been drawn to his hand. The helmet hovered suspended in front of him. Mira dismissed her thought of using magic. A reflective vest tossed high in the brawl followed, dropping precisely onto Lucy's head as though it had been guided. Because she'd moved back, Ches hadn't noticed in time to stop it. Before she could take it off, Elfman's slipper came flying and connected with her. Humiliated, Lucy scurried back to Ches's side, the safest place she could think of, muttering inwardly about her failed attempt to escape the fracas. There's no way I can just barrel in like Urza and punch them all. I'd be dead in a second. Ches asked between bites, where are the Guildmaster and Urza? I haven't seen them. Mira rested her chin on her hand. The Guildmaster was called to the council early this morning. The judgment for Phantom Lord and Jose is being delivered today. And Urza? She said she was going to repair and maintain her equipment last night, Mira said. No wonder they dared to stir up so much trouble at the construction site. If they keep making a mess, the new guild will be stillborn, Ches said flatly. He finished the milk, stood, stretched, and began walking toward the crowd. It's nice to get some exercise after a full meal, Mira said with a faint smile. Wait, if Ches jumps in, the new guild will really be doomed, Lucy blurted. By the time Lucy finished speaking, Ches was already standing in front of Natsu, Gray, and the rest. He looked down at them with an Urza-like severity. Hey, I'm telling you, isn't it about time you stopped? If you're going to fight, make it exciting, he added. What's this petty bickering? He didn't give them a chance to argue. Ches's magic power flared like a shockwave around him. The noisy crowd felt the terrifying pressure and abruptly ceased swinging. Light braided between Ches's fingers and a card manifested in the air. Fusion, whispered someone. Lucy recognized the effect. Fusion, the same magic card she'd seen the night before. It was a rare chance. Ches was preparing to test fusion and then, in the heat of combat, try the Sky Dragon God-Slayer magic he'd been training for days. For fusion to work properly, the two subjects needed to be relatively balanced in strength and possess distinct magical properties. Looking at Natsu and Gray, fire and ice, the choice was obvious. Magic card, fusion, activate, Ches called. The magic circle bloomed at their feet. Natsu, remembering what fusion looked like, yelled, No way! I don't want to merge with that cold block. Merge? You fire breather? What are you talking about? Gray snapped, though he had no idea what was happening. They tried to resist, but the fusion light swallowed them. The two were pulled, bewildered, toward the center of the circle. A blinding flash bathed the area. First came a bone-chilling wind that made everyone shiver, then a wave of dry, searing heat, as though the crowd were standing inside a furnace. The assault of ice and fire crashed one after the other. When the light dimmed, a new figure stepped out of the conflagration and frost. A single presence radiating strange, powerful magic power. It was the merged form of ice and fire, and every eye in the construction site locked onto it. The man had sharp eyes, thick muscles, and a tall, straight posture. The fairy tale emblem on his chest and right arm was unmistakable. In him, everyone saw shadows of Natsu and Gray. The most striking feature was his short ombre hair that faded from black into cherry blossom pink. A stray lock fell across half his cheek, swaying in the breeze along with the dragon scale necklace at his throat. He looked inexplicably cool. Hey, what exactly is this? He looks like both Natsu and Gray. Did those two really fuse? He's both hot and cold. It's like their auras combined. Also, doesn't he have a kind of pink, summery, girlish vibe? Lockie piped up unexpectedly. Everyone, what on earth is a pink, summery, girlish vibe? I saw it yesterday. Happy flew up, taking on the role of commentator. This is a new card fusion chess got. It can merge two people into one. Their magic power is much stronger than a single person's, and they can use all the magic both people have at once. By the way, even a fusion of the mighty Me and Natsu was useless, so don't get your hopes up too high, Happy added smugly. Fusion magic. The crowd fell silent, staring at the strange but familiar man. Ara, as expected of chess, this is getting interesting, Mira said more calmly, smiling and clapping her hands. Takeover magic was its own kind of fusion. A user's personality could shift depending on what they took over. When Mira used Satan's soul, she was wilder than usual. Demons like Citri and gods like Harfus were even more dangerous. Carelessness could lead to terrifying destruction. Happy and Natsu are already like that. I can't even imagine what kind of personality would come from a monster and a pervert merging. Lucy grumbled from behind Mira. That would be awful, Lucy finished, poking her head out. In a darker corner, Juvia, sobered from her love-drowned stupor, stared at the fusion card in Chess's hand with mad eyes. No one wanted to guess what she was imagining. Hey, the one striking the pose over there. Who are you now? Macau called into the crowd toward the fused figure. Hey, I'm neither Natsu nor Gray. I'm the strongest mage in Fairy Tale right now, the man announced. Ice Flame Dragon Nagrez, a smug echo carried his words. The crowd bristled. So arrogant. I want to punch him. Nagrez, put some clothes on, Mira said flatly. Nagrez suddenly looked down and saw he wore only a pair of briefs. What? When? He blurted. Mira's single short command had shattered whatever cool he'd been aiming for. He inherited the stripping habit perfectly, Lucy called out loudly. Nagrez adapted quickly. He raised his hand and pointed at Chess, laughing. Ha! Regret your foolishness, Chess. Now I am above you, he roared, battle intent flaring in his eyes. He bent, coiled, and slammed the ground with a stomp that cracked the plaza. He shot forward at incredible speed. His right fist tightened and flared with blazing fire. Here we go, following Gray's stripping habit and Natsu's recklessness. Unfazed, Chess drew a dark golden magic aura. He pivoted sideways, easily dodging Nagrez's flaming punch, and caught the other arm. Don't be in such a hurry. Since it's a formal challenge, then we need to. Chess doubled his grip, spun Nagrez a full 360 degrees, and hurled him toward the inland lake behind the guild. Change to a stage where we can fully unleash our power. A pink stream of light shot from the card and streaked after Nagrez, appearing before him almost instantly. A girl in black magic garb smiled down at him. Nice to meet you, Nagrez, she said, raising a pink staff. Super magic wave. The staff struck him with a heavy, blunt force to the head and altered his parabolic path. Nagrez crashed into the lake. The calm surface shattered like a mirror as a towering column of water exploded upward, then broke into rain that pelted back down. Black Magician Girl floated in midair, winking and making a peace sign toward the shore. Old perverts like Macau and Wakaba were instantly smitten, their eyes turning into hearts. The lake's surface turned icy in an instant. Centered on Nagrez's impact point, chill air billowed outward and froze the whole expanse in seconds. That hurt, you bastard! Nagrez cursed as he climbed out from the frozen water, rubbing the lump on his head. He didn't seem seriously worse for wear. Chess narrowed his eyes. Black Magician Girl had hit hard enough that, under normal circumstances, neither Natsu nor Gray would have walked away unscathed. Natsu, especially, might have been knocked out cold. Nagrez's resilience was impressive. On the ice, Nagrez shook his head and brought his palms together at his waist, the beginning stance for Gray's magic. Molding magic, ice make, geyser. A pale blue magic circle flared. Nagrez slammed his palms down, and a giant pillar of ice blasted up, aiming straight for Black Magician Girl in midair. A cold wind howled. The girl was caught off guard and froze solid, an ice sculpture forming around her in an instant. Cracks spidered across the statue's surface. The ice pillar itself was only up for a second before cracks spread through it. A pink light from within the frozen statue flared brighter and shattered the pillar at waist height, sending crystalline shards flying. Idiot, that was Gray's move, right? I was on guard, you know. Black Magician Girl swung her staff with a proud grin. The moment she'd been hit by the geyser, she'd deployed a magic barrier. Nagrez only grinned back. The ice shards hanging in the air suddenly ignited with crimson flame, each one like a miniature grenade with its pin pulled. Then how about this? Ice Flame Dragon's Frostfire Bombs. The ice shards, saturated with fire energy, detonated with a series of deafening explosions. Shockwaves rattled the air, flames and thick smoke belched skyward, spreading outward until more than half the sky was filled with flame and ash in an instant. Chapter 118, Roar of the Ice Dragon. This is the first release on the whole network. Really? Ice exploding like bombs with flames? The perfect fusion of Ice Make and Fire Dragon Slayer magic. Isn't this even stronger than a unison raid? So strong! Macau and the others stood dumbfounded, watching the firelight surge and detonate in midair. The fusion's effect was obvious, far beyond what Natsu and Gray could achieve together. The chain of explosions continued for dozens of seconds. When the commotion finally died down, a figure stepped out of the thick smoke and stood steady on the frozen lake. Elf Swordsman, summoned as a substitute, planted his greatsword horizontally in front of him and stared defiantly across the ice at Nagrez. Phew, that was close. Black Magician Girl, who should have been sent back to the deck, reappeared on the shore and sighed over the near miss. Chess had activated his preset trap card, Substitution, bringing up Elf Swordsman, a monster unaffected by battle destruction, to swap places with her. It wasn't to minimize losses or because he worried about the Black Magician Girl. It was to teach her a lesson. You still have the nerve to call others idiots. Even if it's an internal fight, pay attention. Chess slammed his fist into Black Magician Girl's head. He wanted to snap her out of her careless streak. When she'd smashed through the ice pillar earlier, she'd had time to notice the odd ice shards, but had just gone along with it. Mmph. Black Magician Girl clutched her head, looking wronged. Chess, be gentle with girls. Mira stepped forward to protect her. If it had been thick-skinned Lucy, she'd probably have laughed and said, "Ara ara" from the side. But Black Magician Girl had long been treated like a little sister. The girl's eyes darted around. Then she flung herself into Mira's arms with theatrical whining. Wah! Mira, look at Master! Lucy watched, transfixed, as if she'd discovered another of the girl's hidden charms. Exactly, ignore Chess, that card nerd. Let a reliable big sister protect you. Black Magician Girl, I'm always happy to help with this kind of thing. Macau and Wakaba, those two lecherous idiots, scented an opportunity and slunk closer. Lucy scolded them. Mira simply used a kindly look and sent them scurrying back. While the shore's atmosphere relaxed, Nagrez on the ice had already dispensed with the summoned elf swordsman after a few probing attacks. Guildmates knew an elf swordsman's special trait. It is unaffected by battle destruction only if the attacker doesn't hit with overwhelming force. Strike harder, and that protection won't activate. As the summoned elf swordsman returned to the deck, Chess's fingertip card slid out and glowed with a magic circle. Whoosh! 3 light swords descended from the sky, a binding magic, fixing Nagrez in place. Saint Light Protective Seal Sword, huh? This won't stop the Ice Flame Dragon's advance, Nagrez said, standing in the center of the light blades. He clenched his fists and poured in surging magic. Ice condensed on the surface of the 3 light swords. Then intense heat followed, ice and fire alternating rhythmically. After a few cycles, with the binding nearly worn down, Nagrez roared and exploded his power, shattering the light swords. Oh, you even used physics. Not bad. Chess clapped and praised. Not surprised. If this fused Nagrez couldn't manage that, there'd be no reason for him to bring out Godslayer magic of the Sky Dragon later. Nagrez stood amid the scattering light particles of the broken seal, a confident smile tugging at his mouth. You buried that trap card under your feet, didn't you? He called. Want to try and stop me? Chess had guessed the next move from the violent magic pouring from Nagrez. Then you better defend well. I don't want the old man scolding me later. Nagrez didn't act as recklessly as Natsu. Gray's personality tempered him. He took a deep breath, leaned back slightly, and puffed out his cheeks, gathering magic. His hands moved into the familiar formation for releasing Make Magic. The pose looked odd from afar, but the fairy tale members had no time for complaining. Their eyes widened in terror as they recognized the threat. No way. You're gonna use that here? Stop it, Natsu. No. Gray. No, Nagrez. The new guild house will be razed to the ground. Don't panic, Chess is here. Then why don't you come down from the sky, you dead cat? With a heavy stomp, Nagrez drove his foot down and conjured a cool magic circle that linked ice and fire. Ice flame dragons, he bellowed, then opened his mouth and unleashed all the energy he had accumulated in one massive roar. Broom! Ice swords, ice axes, ice hammers, a torrent of ice make creations, carried on a chilling breath, ripped through the void toward the shore where Chess stood. The air's moisture froze wherever it passed, turning the world white as if a blizzard had struck. Chess flipped the face-down card under his foot. Holy Barrier. Mirror Force. Sacred rays braided and formed an indestructible energy barrier right in front of him. The icy torrent slammed into the barrier with bone-shaking force. The ice-make creations clanged against it. The first impact held, but the temperature on the shore plunged and the surface of the barrier developed a thick crust of ice crystals. Before Lucy and the others, who'd retreated over 10 meters, could breathe, a spark of fire flashed at the heart of the ice storm. Flames roared, firelight spiking into the sky. The ice, which should have counteracted the heat, instead acted like combustion fuel, much like the earlier ice shard bombs, and amplified the power of the fire dragon's roar several times over. Rumble. The horizontally erupting volcano hammered the barrier. Under the combined onslaught of ice and fire, a hairline crack spidered across the holy barrier. It was beginning to fail. About the same power as Urza's starbright shower. Chess analyzed calmly from behind the barrier, arms folded. That means, disregarding unpredictable burst effects, this fused Nagrez is S-class level. The amplification is considerable. Chess focused his magic, and the barrier, on the verge of shattering, flashed bright. Whoosh! The mirror forces effect activated. Dense holy light tore through the ice and flame like a meteor shower, streaking across the sky and locking onto Nagrez on the ice. Chapter 119. I killed Chess! Boom, boom, boom. Under the unrelenting bombardment of the holy light meteor shower, a tremendous explosion ripped through the spot where Nagrez had been standing. Terrifying energy scattered outward and ran along the frozen lake toward the shore, causing the whole surface to quake. The ice cracked instantly, water surged up, lifting massive sheets of ice like rafts. Fairytale watched, staring at the now empty lake surface. Nagrez's figure was nowhere to be seen. He vanished into dust. Lucy's face went pale. She covered her head and muttered, "No way. How could Fairytale's current strongest mage be taken out so easily?" A chorus of shocked voices rose, and then suddenly a blister of scorching light appeared on the water near the shore. Nagrez shot up from it, sending spray everywhere. Flames licked both his hands. His aura was fierce and wild. He dove into the lake to dodge, then prepared a counterattack. Mira, standing beside Lucy, had seen through the move at once. To react the instant he was sealed by reflection magic, he really is a fusion of Natsu and Gray. It was true. Natsu was often reckless, but he had ridiculous combat instinct. Gray brought cool analysis. Put together, Nagrez was a nightmare opponent. He knew Chess's duelist soul magic inside and out and could recognize card effects at a glance and counter them. If Chess doesn't go all out, he might actually lose this. Mira said with a smile as she looked toward Chess, who stood bathed in firelight. Her tone, however, stayed unnervingly calm. Nagrez's flames tightened around his fists as he launched himself into the air. There's no way Chess has time to set a card in this instant. He combined the fire in his left hand with the fire in his right and formed a blazing drake of flame. Immediately, he cast ice-make magic around his right fist, compressing the fiery mass into a single, massive projectile. Take this! Ice Flame Dragon Burst! Frost Fist! 2 torrents of elemental power erupted and drove him forward, propelling Nagrez down in a rapid dive toward the shore. He knew Chess's style intimately and had a plan. Skip the cards, get into close range, and defeat Chess in direct combat. Victory to him felt inevitable. To his surprise, Chess didn't move. He just stood there, calm, making no sign of drawing a card. Had Chess surrendered because it was too late? No, that was not him. He must be planning something big. Nagrez remained on guard the whole time, convinced there were no cards set at Chess's feet. but a fusion of Natsu and Gray wasn't the type to be cautious for long. Whatever you've got, I'll find out by fighting you. The ice and fire waves slammed down like a tidal surge. Even those watching from a distance felt it press on their chests. Chess's pupils narrowed as he watched Negrez loom larger in his sight, but he didn't flinch. Then the ice flame dragon burst struck and hit with a colossal crash. Rumble. The impact radiated outward. The carefully built stonework of the lake embankment and the surrounding area were reduced to smoldering rubble in an instant. Smoke, sparks, and shards of ice filled the air, swallowing the view. Fairy Tale held its breath. Would Chess be blown away by that blow? Through the thick smoke, Negrez remained braced in his punching posture. Instead of triumph, his face drained of color. A look of pure horror spread across him. I killed Chess? He thought, panic rising, and then a voice cut through the haze. Don't get cocky. That level won't do. Chess's voice was calm. A sudden gale swept through, clearing the dust from the sky. Negrez's panic spiked. His eyes widened as the smoke lifted. There stood Chess on the scorched ground where ice and fire met. The spot his feet now covered was unharmed. Negrez's thrown fist had been stopped by a single hand. No way. Chess stopped that with just his body? Someone demanded. His physical strength isn't bad, but the opponent is the fusion of Natsu and Gray, others exclaimed in disbelief. Kana, sharp-eyed, pointed something out. Wait, look at Chess's arm. Everyone looked. Chess's right arm, the one holding Negrez's fist, was coated in a crimson sheen like a layer of armor. Scales, dragon scales, glinted in the light. Through their contact, Negrez detected a holy aura so intense it made his head swim. Pay attention, Negrez. What I'm about to use is the power of a god. Chess's eyes narrowed. He drew a deep breath and poured everything into his right arm. Buzz, buzz, a dark golden magic storm erupted from him. The aura deepened to a vivid scarlet in an instant. Even standing nearby, the onlookers felt their hearts race. A godly presence made their bodies tremble. Chess's magic has changed. It's an ability we've never seen. Only Mira, S-Class, managed to stay composed. Her brow pinched. Her face grew unusually serious. If I'm not mistaken, that's... Lucy craned her neck, peering at the dragon-shaped silhouette forming around Chess in the scarlet light. She whispered, Osiris, the Sky Dragon? Yup, it looks like the god card Chess mentioned. Happy fluttered down from the air. God card? Came the stunned chorus. Negrez, who held Natsu's memories, also recognized the imposing dragon form and felt a rush of adrenaline and excitement sweep away his earlier panic. I don't know exactly what happened, but in short, a grin spread across his face. Chess, you've become a dragon slayer now, haven't you? Let me correct you. I'm a god slayer. Chess said coolly. He took a heavy step forward and gathered the divine aura into his right arm. And this is Osiris' judgment. Thunder cracked. A holy radiance blazed out as Chess pushed his palm forward. Negrez was blown backward with unbearable force. He became a streaking meteor, his body a blur as he smashed through the giant ice floes on the lake like they were paper. In an instant, he was hurled thousands of meters across the water and slammed hard into the mountain range on the far side of the lake. Chapter 120, Sky Dragon vs. Ice Flame Dragon. Ice shards flew, trees splintered, and countless rocks tumbled down the mountainside in a thunderous roar. In the deep, cracked crater across the lake, Negrez pushed himself up through the scattered ice, shaking his head. A split second before he would have slammed into the mountain, he'd used the recoil of his flames and the cushioning of ice make to dissipate most of the impact. He's like a monster. That bastard Chess. A trace of unease lingered in Negrez. He could reproduce the same attack Chess had just used, but the other's God-Slayer magic carried some suppressive effect. His own magic had gone chaotic. To be able to minimize damage by leveraging the magic's properties, the first time you face God-Slayer magic, you've got tricks. Chess, across the lake, grinned approvingly. He truly was the blend of Natsu and Gray. A fight's only fun when it's like this. Calmly smiling, Chess shrugged off the short-sleeved shirt he'd been wearing, revealing a well-muscled torso. Why take your shirt off before a fight? Lucy blurted. Mira caught the shirt Chess casually tossed and cradled it with a smile. So it won't get ruined during the fight. Is he really that meticulous about saving clothes? Lucy jabbed sharp. Yeah, Mira said with the same easy smile. Chess always pays full price if he breaks something. Lucy pressed a hand to her forehead. I feel like we're not on the same page. Happy raised a paw. I, Lucy, Chess is super stingy. He even argues about the wall I scratched. You should have told me this half a month ago. Thinking of the pink dumbbell at home that cost 30,000 J, Lucy sagged with exasperation. Suddenly she straightened, hands on her hips, and leveled a mock-serious look at Happy. You have to pay for my walls and pillars, too. She nearly fell for this dead cat's antics again. While they bickered, their guildmates weren't idle. After learning a few details about the god card Osiris the Sky Dragon from Happy, Kana led the charge with the fighting spirit passed down from Master Makarov. Place your bets, someone cried. The betting began. Chess concentrated his magic, became a crimson streak, and shot across the lake toward Nagrez. He couldn't let loose full power so close to the guild construction site, but in an instant, he was directly above Nagrez. His right leg, covered in scarlet dragon scales, spun down in a stomp like the whiptail of a sky dragon descending from the heavens. Boom! A magic shockwave split the ground beneath them. Nagrez retreated from the rising force, his stacked fists and palms glowing with a cold chill. Ice Flame Dragon's Lancer, Meteor Volcano. From a dazzling magic circle erupted dense, thorny ice spears wreathed in scorching flame, lancing at the airborne Chess. Chess spread his arms. Crimson magic coalesced around them into the shape of dragon wings. Rather than dodge, he dove straight into the spears. Sky Dragon's Wing Attack! Whoosh! The two techniques met. Ice shattered, fire dissipated. With overwhelming force, Chess tore through the Lancer, Meteor Volcano. Damn it, he's stealing my magic. Nagrez scowled at the familiar move, slammed the ground, and mirrored Chess's stance. Ice Flame Dragon's Wing Attack. One wing of ice and one of fire formed behind him, and from them a giant red and blue dragon phantom unfurled. The Ice Flame Dragon that Nagrez condensed rose to meet Chess's Sky Dragon Phantom without hesitation. Bang! Their heads collided with a dull thud, magic shockwaves rippling outward. Ouch! Ouch! Both fighters staggered back, clutching their bruised foreheads. Heh heh! I had the upper hand. Nagrez chuckled as he recovered. Chess felt a sudden chill across his forehead. Ice crystals shimmered and began spreading across his body at a visible pace. So that's what you did. Hid Ice Make in your Dragon Slayer magic. Clever, but before the freezing could take hold, Chess grinned. I left you a little gift, too. A complex, profound magic circle ignited above Nagrez. Thunder rumbled within it, and a blast shot out, white arcs leaping from its center and slamming into Nagrez. The Sky Dragon's signature move, Thunder Force Attack, capable of obliterating the weak and crippling the strong. Boom! The Thunder Force attack detonated, blasting Nagrez back into the ground far below and sending dust and rubble into the air. Crackle. Chess channeled his power, violently shattering the ice coating his own body and freeing himself from the freeze. He regained mobility as the ice flakes fell away. On the ground in the crater, Nagrez hauled himself up from a pile of smashed stone. Damn, how did taking one shot drain so much of my magic? His voice had shifted from fearless bravado to something more gray-like. He frowned. This disadvantage could still be turned around, if only Chess hadn't yet used his best cards. If Nagrez called over the Black Magician girl who watched from the shore, summoned Black Magician, and then played a magic-boosting card, he really might not have a chance. Lucy's tiny chibi avatar suddenly popped into the frame, speechless and smug. Isn't that the title you gave yourself? Strongest Magician? It's decided. I'll finish you with this move. Nagrez slammed his fists together, announcing his final attack. Bring it on. Chess accepted readily. After all this, he'd basically tested all the data from their fusion. Now he wanted to verify the upper limit of the Sky Dragon Godslayer magic with his strongest roar. They met each other's gaze, and without a word, began gathering every scrap of magic they had for their ultimate techniques. Dragon Slayer's secret art, Ice Flame Dragons, God's Wrath, Osiris's. I say, you two, do you want to blast this entire mountain range into smithereens? Scarlet hair whipped as a stern shout cut through the air. An imposing, composed figure suddenly appeared between them, stopping the duel that could have cost billions in compensation. It was Urza, clad in her armor.